Have you ever wanted to worship a god so much that it gave you the power to heal people? That's what a cleric is. Welcome to the first episode of Divine Domain, where we're going to be talking about the cleric class and all the lovely little domains that come with it. In case you don't know, a domain is kind of like a cleric's subclass, which you can choose at level 1, which is one of the only classes where you can do that. A little bit about the cleric, first of all. Like I said earlier, clerics gain their abilities from believing in a god. This god can be any god from anything. They're everywhere. They're holy people. I've used them quite a few times for various NPCs who worship gods, including big bad evil guys along the way, because the powers that a cleric gets are probably the coolest ways of getting them. They're basically lazy warlocks. Warlocks go out of their way and they're like, "Oh, mighty patron, please beseech your powers upon to me," or they go on a grand conquest, or they just stumble upon it. Clerics just like a god so much that the god's like, "Aye, gee, I got you," and then, cure wounds. It's not just that as well. Have you ever heard of inflict wounds? 3d10 of necrotic damage. Level 1 spell. That has been the bane of my existence sometimes. So, that's basically enough about a cleric. If you want to know more, I might release like a proper video about a cleric that's actually more informative than what I just told you. But that's not the focus. Today, we are talking about the knowledge domain. It sounds like one of the lamest, and to some of you it might be, because some people don't want to play smarty pants characters. Some people make characters to kill shit, which is fine. And a knowledge domain cleric is the complete opposite of that. They worship gods of knowledge, weirdly. So it gives examples here like Ogma, Bokob, Gilleen, Orion, and Thoth. These are some lovely names. So they're kind of like smarty pants clerics who devote their time to not only worship, but learning. So I'll give you an example. One of the knowledge domain spells you'll start off with at level 1 is identify, which is a wizard thing, but you get the wizard thing for this. And it's other stuff like divination to see in the future, various information gathering spells, and utilities such as arcane eye and confusion. I'll tell you all the knowledge domain spells as they come, which for those unversed with this, clerics' divine domains determine some spells that they will permanently have prepared on their spell list that don't count against your number of cleric spells known. They'll always be there, and a cleric can change up spells every morning, but these ones stay. A first level cleric will always have command and identify. Command so that they can perhaps get a little bit of dominance over some various things and instruct people. Knowledge clerics make for a decent leader, which I found out. And then identify mentioned previously, where as long as you have a pearl worth 50 gold and you put it up to your forehead and you take something that you think might be magic and you cast this spell, and then you know. You'll learn all of the properties of the thing, whether you can attune to it and how to, and every other property, which is pretty neat for a first level spell. And considering it's ritual, you can just cast it as many times as you want as long as you have the time. At third level, you'll have augury, which I believe is a spell where you take a bunch of sticks and stones and bones with markings on them and you rub them together and you go blah 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 blah, tell me about the future, and you'll get weal or woe, which means good or bad, from your god. Just simple cryptic messaging, which is kind of how gods mostly work until you're a 10th level cleric, where then you can start calling them and being like, "Hey, what's up, bro? How you doing?" For the other third level, it's suggestion, which is similar to command, except a more direct thing. Command can be like, "Oh, stop." Suggestion is a much more broad thing. Instead of a single action worth of stuff, you can be like, "I think that you should probably go over to the market." And then for the rest of the hour, the person will be like, "Oh, all right." And then they go to the market for an hour. Pretty neat. Fifth level, non-detection. It's a spell that you'll probably want to cast in the morning, similar to something like Mage Armor, where you are immune to any sort of divination that would understand stuff like where you are, so no one can scry on you, what alignment creature you are. Also, you get Speak with Dead, which is quite a classic cleric spell, but again, it sticks with the theme of gathering information. You take a dead person and you're like, "Speak!" and then you get to talk to it and ask it 5 questions, and it doesn't have to be truthful, but you can always blackmail the dead person and be like, "Listen, man, do you want to die?" And they're like, "Yeah," and they're like, "Okay, I'll revive you if you don't tell me this stuff," and then they might be more obliged to do so. It's a neat spell for those wanting information. For 7th level, you get Arcane Eye, which is a very neat spell where you cast it, a little invisible eye appears, and you can kind of like hover it around for an hour, and it will look out anywhere you need within a mile, and you basically have an extra eye that you can look through for an hour. Confusion you also get at 7th level, where you can make people very confuzzled. When someone fails the wisdom saving throw, they have to roll a d10, and most of the time this will result in them either standing there doing nothing or suddenly lashing out and hitting whoever's next to it, sometimes not doing anything out of the ordinary and allowing them to act freely. 9th level, Legend Lore. This is a very cool spell for things in terms of stuff like, I want to know information about this. It's a hefty spell cost, but it's much better than Augury, where you just get a yes or no. You will learn valuable information about an object, a location, an event, and anything else that you can possibly think of by casting this spell. The way that I normally do it is that it's not necessarily their god speaking to them, which I've seen most people do, but more or less they see images and they see words fly by, so it's kind of like their god's communicating to them roughly, but it's not, ah, that sword is magical, and then they just leave, because that's not as mystical and cool. Also, the final 9th level spell that you get is Scrying, which I mentioned earlier. You gaze into a crystal ball and you go, I know where they are, and then you know where they are. You can choose anyone that you've either met, not met, or various other things that I'll talk about in a second, and you can see what they're doing for a solid 10 minutes. So for instance, you can choose someone that you haven't met before, or that you've just heard of, and it's harder to do. Whoever you're trying to scry on, unless they're willing, they need to make a wisdom saving throw. And the DC is your spell DC, but then also, I believe that DCs change depending on your familiarity with them. If you don't have anything of theirs, and you have literally never met this person and only heard of them, it is going to be stupid hard for them to fail. However, if you have met them before and have some toenail clippings lying around, then it's going to be extremely easy. So that's all the knowledge domain spells. Let's get on to the class features, which for clerics, it's a little more sparse because they are heavy spellcasting ones. Therefore, they don't need too much. At first level, you'll get blessings of knowledge. So you get 2 languages of your choice from anywhere in the world. I kind of explain this as through worship and a little bit of research combined, you found yourself suddenly learning how to read language a lot better. So that's kind of how I flavor it. You also become proficient in 2 skills out of Arcana, History, Nature, or Religion. But it's not just proficient, it's expertise, which means you'll have double your proficiency bonus to add to any check of that kind, which is basically a free extra little bit of knowledge rogue to add to your first level character. First level knowledge domain clerics are amazing for utility, so I would highly recommend doing that for just a shorter adventure. Even though they can extend way beyond, you're going to be the star of the show if you're a level 1 knowledge cleric, if you get to do your things, depending on what DM you have. Always ask for things. Ask about what your character knows of this particular arcane object, if they understand the history behind this event, or they know not to touch that strawberry that's actually going to grow spikes the moment that you put your finger on it. Second level, you will get another use of your channel divinity, which is kind of like a cleric bread and butter, where every cleric at second level can use this channel divinity, which they have once every short or long rest. They will always have turn undead, which is a classic. You raise your holy symbol, and all of the undead around you realize that you are indeed a follower of a god, and they realize, oh no, we need to go. And if they fail a wisdom saving throw, they have to start going. That's one use of it. But also, as a second level knowledge domain cleric, you can use it to do knowledge of the ages. So you can choose 1 skill or tool that you know as an action, and for 10 minutes, you have proficiency with the chosen skill or tool. So you don't even have to be proficient with any of the things that you want to be at second level, because you can channel divinity for a second and be like, hey, yo, God, can you give me the ability to use thieves tools? And he's like, I got you, man. I kind of see it as a sudden burst of realization and some level of divine intervention, but not proper divine intervention, because that's a separate class ability. You also get another type of channel divinity at 6th level that you can use, where you get now 2 uses every short/long rest. Read thoughts. So you can use it to read a creature's surface thoughts and then proceed to start controlling them, which is amazing. So they need to make a wisdom saving throw, and if they succeed, they're immune to it for an entire day. But if they fail, you can read its surface thoughts. You can't go deep into its history, but you can read its mind. And it doesn't detect it because it doesn't say, since this is a channel divinity, that you need to do anything arcane in the slightest. You can maybe look at them and shift your holy symbol around in your pocket a little bit, and then you're reading their mind for a minute, and they don't know crap, as long as they're within 60 feet of you. During that time, you can use your action to end it to be able to cast suggestion without using a spell slot and automatically the creature fails the saving throw. So you can figure out what they're up to, and once you know their intentions, cast suggestion and make them do the complete opposite, for which they will have to do for an hour. This is why I really like this. You can fuck with people's brains, and your brain is massive, and it does it in a way that makes sense for a cleric. Instead of just you get suggestion, you read someone's thoughts and you get it. Also, they get potent spellcasting, which is something that a few other clerics get at 8th level, so you can add your wisdom modifier to the damage you deal with any cleric cantrip. This is pretty useful mid-game when you realize that rolling 2d8 for your Toll the Dead on a creature that hasn't taken damage and getting like 7 on a cantrip is getting useless when the fighter attacks twice and gets 15 a hit. So a +3, 4, 5 can really help you in the clutch. Cleric abilities for their domains get a little bit sparse at this point, jumping from 8th to 17th level. However, it's very useful. You get an extra feature, Visions of the Past. So, if you're holding something, or you can see something in your immediate surroundings, you can spend 1 minute in meditation and prayer. Then, you start getting some weird and dreamy shadow past stuff. So, you can do that equal to your wisdom score, and it's kind of like concentrating on a spell, and you can use it to do 2 things. So if you're holding an object as you meditate, you can see visions of who used to own it. So you learn how they got it, you learn the most recent significant event involving it, and if it was owned by another person, you can spend another minute to learn the same information about the person, which is amazing. The big bad evil guy leaves his magical relic and you take it and he's like, oh, okay, they're just gonna take my magical relic, it's fine. But then you suddenly go, oh, and now they know that your mother died. That's fucking cool. That's a knowledge cleric. You can also see visions of a recent event in an immediate vicinity. So a 50-foot cube worth of an area, such as a room or a tunnel, which can go back a number of days equal to your wisdom modifier. So if an object was owned by another creature in the recent past, for the object readings thing, you can see back into your wisdom score as well. So, looking into the area reading again, for each minute that you meditate, you learn about 1 significant event from that place, beginning with the most recent, but they normally involve powerful emotions, so big events, a murder, a marriage, a war, perhaps a massive political meeting, just where emotions are on high. They might include mundane events if you walk into Big Bad Evil Guy room number 37 and meditate for a minute and you see a guy walk in and then walk out. So sometimes that's not amazing, but thinking of all the flipping uses for these visions of the past stuff is amazing, because now the DM can't hide crap from you and you can learn the backstory before being told it or finding it out 5 levels later in the story, which is kind of a knowledge cleric thing. Knowledge clerics are very fun, and this is certainly probably not a class for beginners I would recommend, or at least a domain for beginners, apologies, because it seems very deterring in the beginning. When you're a new player, you come into D&D normally expecting to kind of hit a lot of things, and that was my expectation. And when I was making my first character, I built it entirely around the concept of being very good in combat. If you want to use any of these, it only has 1 ability that comes in combat, and that's just potent spellcasting, which is just a wisdom modifier boost to cantrips. Other than the few domain spells that you can use in combat, such as confusion or command, there's a lot you can do outside of combat, and this is a very utility heavy class. Think of it as some kind of extra boost to knowledge, so you could become some level of a rogue as well. You can give yourself proficiency with thieves tools, and you can do some good ass lore checks. It's a fun class for those of you who don't care so much about killing things and instead want to be very cool and or Sherlock Holmes who worships God. Thank you for watching the first episode of Divine Domain. I want to talk about a barbarian next, specifically something also very religious, so keep your eye out for that. You don't have much time, so I need you guys to listen. You need to click the like button, do the subscribe, and turn on post notifications so that you don't miss a video, because otherwise you're gonna die. And I'm sorry, it just might happen. So you're gonna have to do that quickly. Otherwise, I cannot guarantee your safety. Good luck out there, man. Thanks for watching. It's neat.